I remember not enjoying it. I remember being very upset and quite terrified. But looking back on it, it's one of my favorite things to think about and one of the most impactful moments of the game for me. Hi, we're Games by Design. Thanks for tuning in. Our theme this week is difficulty. Aaron, you wanted to talk about SOMA.
Right, yeah, so I had this interesting experience playing SOMA this week. And SOMA, it's a kind of a sci-fi horror game. It's from Frictional Games. It's the same people who did the Amnesia games, which a lot of people regard as some of the scariest games out there. And I haven't played too many horror games. I don't do too well with the hiding from the big monster and hearing their scary noises and facing threats like that. I played about 5 minutes of Amnesia once and noped out of that one. I played like an hour of Alien Isolation up until like the alien shows up and noped out of that.
Till the alien shows up. What do you do for that
You just
first hour?
It's isolation. You just do.
I was just playing Isolation, space isolation. It's like, I'm alone in space. This is great.
I can do that.
but so think about Soma, and I started playing this. It was around Halloween. I was like, I do like good tension in games. I like atmosphere. So like maybe I should look at this horror genre again, see if I can find something. And I heard that Soma had a really good story. So I was like, okay, well, it's not just like running, hiding. And the thing is, it has a really engaging narrative. It has good characters. And so even though there are these moments where I'm, hiding from big monsters and scary noises, it's like, I gotta keep going. Gotta figure it out.
Uh-huh.
Well, there was this interesting part where I was playing Soma this week, where it was a pretty lengthy section of sneak and hide from monster, making the scary noises. And up to that point, it had kind of been, you have these sections where you're exploring, where you're doing some simple puzzles, where you're finding lore, and kind of moving forward. And then you'll get to a section and you can kind of tell, and it's like, okay, like monster of some sort's going to show up in this section. You need to be careful. And then it was usually like just that brief little segment, and then you're back to the exploring. So I got to this one area, and there'd been a few more monsters than usual. But I get to the section, it's like, okay, this is like the monster section. It's like once I get past this, like we're home free. Well, getting past that section, and it was kind of a bit of a maze. You had to figure out the path of the monster. You had to figure out how to avoid him. They were really sensitive to sound, so you had to, kind of strategize around that. Get past that section, and there's like a whole nother, I don't know, it took me like an hour to get past all these guys. And I find myself just like stumbling around in the dark. The game doesn't tell you anything. There's no indicator of where to go, what to do. You have the general idea of, I need to get out of here. But you're just kind of wandering in the dark. Some doors can open, some doors can't. Some doors lead you out, some doors lead you into a storage closet. And so I find myself this really stressful experience where it's just like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what I'm doing. These monsters are chasing me. I hope this is over soon. And so, it was in the moment where I was like, man, this is like really stressful. This is really difficult. I don't know if I'm enjoying this. But then for some reason I thought about games like Dark Souls and games that I had played before where, I started enjoying the challenge. And I was like, oh, this isn't really different. Like, it's because of this moment that I'm really going to enjoy, the exploration afterwards, or the puzzles afterwards, or that sigh of relief. And when I finally did get through this section, and it found out that even though the game didn't tell me where to go and wasn't giving me any directions, I still managed to find it. Looking back, like I thought it was pretty cool. It was like, it really kind of put me in the shoes of the character, feeling this just desperate survival instinct and not much else, and really having to figure out the environment on the fly and get through it. So I know in the things I was going to talk about this game, it's in a confusing, frustrating game sequences, but that that's a positive because it allows you to appreciate the less frustrating and confusing parts of the game, um, as well as I think can fit really well with the atmosphere, with the environment of the game, and that even if it's frustrating in the moment that the game's not holding your hand or telling you where to go, as you figure it out and looking it back, it's much more of a triumph and a connection to the game than if it had. So that was my interesting roller coaster experience with that game. Have either of you guys had a similar thing playing a game, something really challenging, or just a similar difficulty that, like, in the moment was difficult, but then looking back, you realize its value?
Um, Something that comes to mind, another game that is quite scary. The part of The Last of Us that I remember the most, gameplay wise, like it has some story and stuff that is definitely very memorable, but like gameplay moments, there is this bit, that was just so harrowing for me. I made some poor decisions and I triggered like this zombie horde kind of a thing, and it was this terrifying running around in the dark trying not to die bit, and I remember not enjoying it. I remember being very upset, and quite terrified. But looking back on it, it's one of my favorite things to think about and one of the most impactful moments of the game for me. And so while it wasn't necessarily fun, it was really memorable and really impactful. So that's something that comes to mind.
I think that we've talked about this kind of thing, excuse me, a lot, but it's kind of the idea that, like, when a game demands something of you, then it has the opportunity to like give you something a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
Like we've talked about challenge and we've talked about difficulty and we talked about the emotional and frustrating gut punches that a game can give you. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and we talk about like The Witcher for a good example of like some of the stuff that makes you feel really uncomfortable, or The Last of Us with its violence and terror and stuff. And then also like the challenges of like Crusader Kings or whatever, where it's like, oh man, I liked that character. Now he's dead, and or oh man, my daughter got tortured and executed by her husband, and like
Yeah.
terrible
That's a
things
bummer.
happen, and so it was such a bummer, man. That sucked. I was so angry. But the thing is, like, I think that this my reigning theory right now in my mind is that the connection there's a connection between the what a game demands that you sacrifice and what a game can give you, like you have to give something to the game in order to get something from the game. And I think that includes the challenge, the difficulty and the like the technical difficulty of playing the thing, but also like the like emotional difficulty of like experiencing setbacks and frustrations and hard things and failures and like losing characters and progress that you cared about,
Yeah. Like it makes for the most meaningful experiences because games can be fun, and I enjoyed fun games, but I don't remember playing Bloons Tower Defense 6. I don't remember what was going on last time I played that game. It was fun, but I'm not gonna, there's not like a play-by-play of all the balloons getting popped, etched into my brain.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think we talked about this last time, like with a game like Dark Souls, because of the struggle and because you're doing things over and over again and trying and failing, you learn and remember that game so well. Like where every enemy's
Yeah.
at, where the level's going. And when I was playing Soma, I thought about Dark Souls and was like, wow, it's like I think the reason that like the exploration in Dark Souls is so cool is because you have this moment that you're not banging your head against a boss, or this difficult section. It's those moments that cause a halt in progress or cause you to stagnate a little bit that allow you to appreciate that freedom that you later feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this contrast, and without the terrible stuff, the good stuff doesn't feel quite as good.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like it's a diamond on black velvet, like you gotta know the lows if you're gonna know the highs, and it's kind of, I think, directly proportionate, proportion. I don't even know how to say that word. Proportional, whatever. They're correlated. They're connected. They're if you go -10 sad, then you can go +10 happy.
I'm gonna write that down and put that on my wall.
If I could have a quick follow-up question, I was just thinking, so knowing that the games, difficult moments in games, frustrating moments in games can have that nice contrast. Something I was wondering too, was like, I don't know, it seems like that could also excuse maybe some poor game design, or like if something is, I don't know, if something's just frustrated because it wasn't designed that well or it wasn't paced that well. How do we tell the difference?
That's a good
Isn't
question.
it like
So like what was that?
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was gonna say it's frustrating, but not like in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I think maybe I think what makes the difference for me is if it feels contrived,
Mm-hmm.
Because like if I'm playing Dark Souls and there's like a dragon thing that I'm supposed to kill and its stomach opens up and eats me and there's like, yeah, it's horrible, and like that's the kind of thing that I expect. It makes sense that I would struggle with that.
Okay, I thought that makes sense. Dragons with stomachs that open in you. I expect that. No, I see.
I expect that. Well, I do expect that now. Thanks to Dark Souls. But the thing is, on the other side of that, it's like, if the frustration is like I can't walk down a hallway without getting caught on the geometry, like that's not a satisfying thing to overcome.
You can't open a door in Portal.
Oh gosh, that was so annoying. Yeah, but like stuff like that. So I think that really it's like, and like obviously having a hard time walking down a hallway can be a really interesting thing, so long as that's like, you have some kind of reason and like rationale for it. But like if the struggle of the game is against the game and not the adversaries and obstacles in the game, then I think it's I think that's when that's the line I don't like about it. That's the line I draw.
I think it's one of the reasons Dark Souls can throw so much crap at you is because Dark Souls is so precise and so tight. The controls are really specific. And the world is crafted in such a, like, you have control over yourself, and so you're not dealing with like frustrating game. You're not dealing with a lot of bugs. You're not dealing with like, oh, my character's not turning when I want him to. My character's not rolling when I want him to. Like, it does it when you want it to.
That's a little debatable with the first Dark Souls, but
yeah, but you're right. It's not 100%, and I think you still can have those moments. But I think when Dark Souls at its best is when you're in complete control of you, and the stuff you should have control over, and what you're coming up against is the challenge the game is throwing at you, the giant stomach dragon. So that's my thought anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like that internal consistency with the game and the game logic, and
right.
So if you were fighting a boss in Dark Souls and you're like expecting this boss fight, and then it turns into this weird platforming challenge, you'd be like, that's bad game design.
Man, platforming in Dark Souls would be terrible.
Yeah. Yep.
But that would never happen, right? That there would never be a boss that would make you do weird on the fly platforming instead of
for those not familiar, what is it called? The bed of chaos in Dark
yeah.
Souls 1. That is a moment of frustrating Dark Souls. That is frustrating because there's platforming, and platforming in Dark Souls sucks. So
It's not Mario. It doesn't fit.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Aaron, if I
Didn't bring that up.
if I may segue off of your point into another,
Absolutely.
they on the subject of games. Well, let me just jump in, and I think you'll see how it connects. So I was playing The Fall, which is this side-scroller sci-fi horror. I don't even know what to call it. Point-and-click adventure. It's kind of a point-and-click adventure, but you run side to side. If I'd known it was a point-and-click adventure, I might have not started playing it because I kind of don't have a great history with those kinds of games, and so maybe this story is just my own darn fault. But I started playing it, and there's this. It's got a lot of puzzles, and it was like the first puzzle, and I threw my head against it several. It was an early on in the game puzzle. I was enjoying the game, and I was kind of invested. And I threw my head against this puzzle a few times, and it was I just could not figure it out. It was some obscure logic that just was not coming to me. It was a puzzle. Puzzles are supposed to be puzzling, and I don't have a great brain for game puzzles all the time. Mm-hmm. So I eventually looked it up, and I just looked up the solution. I was like, oh, okay, I'll move on in the game. We'll get to the next one, and I'll do it next time. This one obviously, hopefully, is the exception. And then continue with the game and find another puzzle that is frustrating and difficult and I noticed the second time I got frustrated faster, and I was less patient than with the first puzzle, and I looked up the answer again a lot sooner this time. And this pattern continued with the game, where I just kept getting frustrated by a puzzle, and my tolerance just got shorter and shorter and shorter until basically I was playing the game with a walkthrough in one hand. I just lost all trust in the game design, and I just wanted to get through the darn thing. And so I wonder if you guys have had similar experiences where, like, where you lose trust, at which point you just want to get through it, or where the difficulty just isn't worth the effort. I wonder if you guys had similar experiences, and yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Oh man, totally. This reminds me very much of when we were playing Celeste, which is really interesting that we're talking about it now, because we were just talking about how, like, the difficulty, like climbing the mountain is the difficult challenge of Celeste, and it makes sense that it would be hard and challenging and demand a lot from you. Mm-hmm. And also that, I'm here saying, like, that makes sense. And then, like, if a game doesn't require anything of you, then it can't give you anything. And, like, and then I'm like, but I hated that game. and the way, it's precise too. Like, the platforming is super tight and everything. And I think maybe it's just not a style that I appreciate. But the thing is, that was kind of my experience too, was like, I started playing it and I was like, I don't like doing these rooms over and over again. I don't like this platforming and whatever. And then I was like, okay, there's an assist mode. So I just turned on the assist mode, and then I started with like a feature or two, and then I was like, it's still not easy enough. I still don't, because I just wasn't like interested. I didn't like the game, and so, like, I just cranked it all up, and then eventually it got to the point where I wasn't even playing the game anymore. I was just breezing through it on the assist mode, and flying around, and
yeah,
and so, and that ruined it too, for the same reason I think that I was just talking about, where, like, if you don't give anything, you don't get anything. But
yeah,
that's another experience I had that's kind of like yours.
Yeah, I guess it's like, once you open that can of worms, the cheat just a little. I get yeah.
The slippery slope.
It is, and I wonder, is there a way to avoid that? Like,
Well, you could do the Dark Souls thing and don't have difficulty settings, or.
well, I mean, like, because I was playing a game. I mean, like, this game was a point and click adventure. So you get all these obscure puzzles where you're supposed to, put the key card in the fish soup, and you put the fish soup key card in the guy's mouth, and a balloon pops out. I don't know. That is not what happened in the fall, but it's about as much sense as sometimes it felt like it made. So, but once you. And I guess I want to talk about opening that can of worms, opening the well, this is too hard, I'll just use an exploit, or I'll just cheat a little bit, or I'll just to get past this, and like that slope. I guess that's what I'd like to focus on, and that you already touched on, Zach. But so yeah, any other experiences like that or thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was playing the Tomb Raider reboot game, the first one of those. I was playing that like a week ago. And most of the puzzles in that game aren't too challenging, but because of the janky nature of some of the physics and the controls, yeah, there were a few challenges. It was like, I feel like I should be able to do this. I can't do this. So, must be something else. I think what you talk about, it's the balance of something being difficult while you still trust that it's intentional by the game. I think when you feel like it might just be something buggy in your game, or that something, is going wrong, then, you can't trust the game. And so you don't know how to play by its rules. But on a contrast to that, with what you're saying with the slippery slope, with a couple of times I had to, look up a solution. And in the past I've said, sometimes I look up a solution. If it's just a couple of times and I can get through the end of the game, overall, like I don't think it damages the experience for me. It might be in the initial, like, oh, that would have been satisfying to figure out, or oh, I should have been more patient. But ultimately, if it's, oh, I'm just gonna look it up to get past it, or I'm gonna put it down and not pick it up again. I think it works out. But yeah, I think so long as you can trust, I don't know, maybe if something's difficult, you still trust that the game is smarter than you, and you just have to figure it out, rather than the game is dumber than you and you have to force it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think you're less likely to just, like you say, go on the slippery slope and just try to, just force the game to get through it. Like I said, just use like using a walkthrough on a puzzle game. Like, what's the point of that? But if you just want to get to the end, if you're at that point, it's like, okay, clearly something in this game failed.
Yeah, I think kind of what you were saying, Aaron, made me think that there are times when I'll play a game and I will cheat on it to do something or whatever, but then it doesn't actually set the tone for the rest of it, and I will go back to not cheating. It does happen sometimes. So like, I don't think the slippery slope is absolute. And I think that it makes a lot of sense in a game like The Fall, or I've not played it, but in a point and click puzzle game, if you don't like the puzzles, then it makes sense that it would be a recurring grievance that you have against it, and it's kind of like the same issue, over and over again. It's like, oh, a bad puzzle I don't like, oh, another one, and then it's not like when you're playing a game, maybe it's some disjointed AAA game where there's like some mini game that just makes absolutely no sense and is stupid and dumb, and then but the rest of the game is fine, but every time you get to that mini game you're like, oh, I hate this, and then you look it up, and and then you go back to, I think it's a little bit different there. But when the game is overwhelmingly about the thing that you don't like, then I think that it's a lot more likely that you'll end up slipping
Yeah,
on that slippery.
yeah, and I think
Talking about it like it's an addiction. It's funny.
yeah, um, the it's interesting because like I think that it has something to do, like you said, with the fact that I don't know that I'm built for point and click adventure games anyway. I don't think I really like them as much anyway. Puzzle games in general aren't my favorite. Um, but and so when I think of the experience I had with the Outer Wilds, where there was a puzzle I looked up in Outer Wilds just because I could not figure it out. But I loved the rest of that game, and that really didn't sully my experience with it. That game is much more open-ended, and you can throw yourself at different puzzles at different times.
Yeah.
And you never, and there's kind of different solutions and stuff. They're more like problems in that way, in that like they're just there to be solved, as opposed to you have to do it a very specific way. And I think that frustrated me a lot about the fall. Was there is one thing that you do, and that is the only way to get out of this room. And if you come up with a clever solution, it doesn't matter because it's not the clever solution. I know we talked about that a little bit before, the idea of there being like a prescriptive solution. But with Outer Wilds, I noticed that it wasn't a slippery slope again, like we said. You know, it was. I did it and then it was out of the way. I was, oh great, I can get back to solving all the other problems because this is fun.
Yeah, with my experience of Outer Wilds, I felt like I would make the game difficult for myself by trying to, I don't know, force it into the way that I wanted to play at the moment. You know, instead of, oh, I can't figure this particular issue out, there's the whole rest of the galaxy to explore. Just like, no, I'm going to figure this one thing out, you know? And you may not have, the whole thing about Outer Wilds is information, and having the right information to move forward. Yeah. And so if you don't have the information, you know, there are some things that really challenge them. So I think that's the thing that can happen too, is because if we get impatient with the game and just want to finish it, or we're not really picking up on the hints on how the game wants us to play it, and we're stubbornly playing it in our own way, we can kind of shoot ourselves in the foot difficulty wise or frustration wise, and then blame the game. But
yeah.
I want to just gush about Outer Wilds, how Outer Wilds handle this is for a second. I think it's really brilliant that
please.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it's so good. I haven't even finished it, but I'm still playing it, but you know, slowly. I'm not smart enough, I guess. But or maybe I just need to cheat more. But I think that the way that it handles, I mean, okay, so you're playing a game like a point and click adventure or a puzzle game where it's like, you know, you go from thing to thing, and then it's like, you know, you have to follow a prescribed sequence, and this is the way you handle all these puzzles. And then you do a game like the Outer Wilds, which is like, yeah, you know, go work on whatever you want, you know. And I think that the difference there is like, yeah, there's like a bunch of obscure puzzles that you need to throw yourself against a few times to figure it out in Outer Wilds, but like, it's always voluntary. It's never like, oh, I didn't want to do this right now, you know. And like, I think that makes it way more tolerable than something that's like, this is the only thing that you are allowed to play in this game right now.
You're not,
and it's called this puzzle that you got to figure out.
You're not trapped in a room until you figure it out, and there's
exactly
nowhere you can go until you absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so good about the Outer Wilds approach. It's really clever. It's really quite ingenious because it lets you like, because there's so many of those puzzles to figure out, but you can figure out them in like a really disjointed sequence, and there's really,
or figure it out by accident.
You can't find a prescribed path. Yeah. Or figuring it out by accident. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got on that. No, I just think that's really great.
I agree, and thank you.
But maybe there's kind of an aspect of whether or not it's voluntary that kind of affects it for me too, you know? Because like, I think difficulty and challenge that I have to face and don't have an option of going to do something else in the meantime, like that's not something I enjoy. And maybe that's part of why I didn't like Celeste too. It's starting to make a little more sense to me, you know. But with something like the Outer Wilds or other strategy games or simulation games or whatever, it's like, yeah, you know, do whatever you want, you know, like just go, you know, come back when you're ready or when you feel like it. And then when I do feel like it, I feel like it, and then I'm usually in a state to handle it because I feel like it, you know.
Yeah. Definitely.
I know this was something that was brought up with the game design of Breath of the Wild, that the people who were making that game, in that game there's 120 little shrines scattered throughout the world that a lot of them are focused on puzzles. But when they were
Mhm.
designing the game, they said that they didn't want to make so much puzzles, but problems for the player to solve. 'Cause they said that puzzles only have one solution, and you have to find that solution. But what they wanted to do was have multiple different solutions that you could find to solve the problem. Just use what's at your disposal to get through it. Um, and so I think that that's something that is interesting, and that can sometimes make a frustrating problem to a satisfying problems, like when the game allows you to find your own way to do something. um and it's kind of like what you said. It's not just like forcing you down this one complex path, but you can look at what the game's given you and find your own thing. I think that's something that's really cool that game does. And maybe if more games implemented things like that, there'd be less of these frustrating just look at the walkthroughs to get past it moments.
Yeah,
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
absolutely. I agree.
Of course, I also want to say, like,
Well,
sometimes you just need a puzzle. You need, if it's like, I don't know, some intricate setup with one solution, like that can be fun too. But
mhm.
I think more games can allow for more wiggle room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Well, thank you guys for entertaining this question and for your thoughts. I think we'll move on. Aaron, you said you wanted to talk about Rise of the Tomb Raider. Would you share your thoughts on that with us?
Oh yeah, kind of touched on this a little bit. But another game I was playing this week. I talked about I had played the uh, original remake of Tomb Raider before.
Mhm.
Well, now I'm playing the sequel, and in a lot of ways, the sequel really improves on the original one, in that it actually uses the systems that it sets up and has a point to them, which in some ways just makes it a little generic, but I don't know, at least useful. Um, but and there are some puzzles, and there is some platforming in the game, climbing and like grappling and shooting arrows and ropes and climbing on those ropes and jumping from one thing to another. That's pretty common in the game. Um, but there was a negative experience I had with that. Um, and that just to show some contrast, there was one puzzle I was doing that was involving ropes and kind of figuring out how to get these platforms to move up and down in the right way to get across this area. And it was a section I was stuck on for a little bit, but then eventually I figured out what I needed to do, and it was really satisfying. Kind of just what we were talking about. It's like, oh, like that was a solution. I figured it out on my own, and that's really cool. And it was set out in a logical way to understand, and it wasn't really doing anything weird with the mechanics I hadn't done. And so
Mhm.
it was great. But then I get to this section, and I think this wasn't a thing that I had to be stuck on. This was clearly an optional thing that probably wasn't even worth that much. But I got kind of fixated. Um, there was like this section where it's like, okay, if I shoot this rope into this, it'll cause these platforms to raise for a certain amount of time, and then I kind of have to maneuver my way platforming across this level to get there before the time ends, and then I can jump onto this area, that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
and because of how the jumping kind of worked in that game is it's pretty inconsistent. Even up to that point, there's several times it's like, oh yeah, I can make this jump. I made a jump similar to it, and then fall short. It was like I don't know why I fell short. Like I was doing what I was doing. I was running. I jumped for some reason. She just didn't grab onto the ledge. Um, and so it was, yeah, really all we've been talking about. I really don't know if there's much we say that in this moment I did not trust the game enough to you know believe that like I could successfully make it, or I could, but it would be like such a trial and error. I don't know. In as I kept going, it almost felt like I was trying to speed run the game, like in a way that wasn't intentional. But like I knew that this was like an intended, secret path just because how it was laid out. But because of like the precision that was required in this janky platforming, it felt like I was cheating what the game wanted me to do. And so I was like, and again, this was something I didn't have to do. I was just like banging my head, it's just kind of being stubborn, just like, no, like I figured this out. And figuring it out was cool because it's like, oh, how did I get there? It's like, oh, I know exactly what I need to do. And it's like, oh, this is cool. I can do this. But then that wasn't enough. I had to deal with the janky platforming and again, not trusting what the game was giving me. And so, in contrast with this difficult, frustrating moment, actually looking back and saying this is valued, this difficult, frustrating moment caused me to exit out of the game and decide that that wasn't worth it. And then, going forward, I'm not going to trust the game as much to handle those situations well. That I'll probably just go after less of those challenging secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, I feel like this past little bit we talked a lot about that, so I don't know if there's any follow-up question to that. But yeah, I guess case in point, there's an example where some flaws in the design and makeup of the game itself could shift the balance on the challenge so that it no longer feels rewarding or something that you're in control over, but rather something that you're working against the game that you just would rather avoid.
Yeah. That's a bummer too, because it kind of like there might be great other optional puzzles like that in the future that are handled better, but just because like of that bad experience, you just lose that trust, and it kind of spoils that for you. I don't know, and you might not engage with the future ones that might be better just because you had that bad experience.
Yeah, and there had been some moments up to that too where it'd be like, oh, I feel like I should just be able to jump to this ledge or jump from this rope to this rope to get there. Why can't I do that? And then like later on, it's like, oh, I guess I needed this item in order to do that. But the way that the game's laid out, it's like I don't see like why she needs this item. So it's I don't know.
Yeah,
and it's interesting because I looked up some reviews for the game. The game came out, I don't know, a few years ago, like 2016, maybe before. I don't know, but like when it came out, people were like, "Oh man, the jumping feels really good," and like she moves like really well. So like I don't know if it's just a case of like the game's a bit older now, and we've been like spoiled with like how things can move in the game. But me playing is like, oh, like this doesn't feel exactly ironed out. So I don't know. I guess a game's age can add some artificial difficulty to it as well. If
yeah,
we definitely see that. So maybe
definitely.
they're limited in what they could do at the time. But yeah, and that wasn't something I could just look up and like, oh, now I can do it. It's like, no, I know how to do it. It's just the game's not letting me do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
No, good thoughts. Definitely. Thank you. Zach, you wanted to talk about Faster Than Light?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So actually this is something that I saw in a few games that I really, really like. This is like a type of, I know we're talking about difficulty today.
Yeah.
But something that I like, this is like a specific aspect of difficulty, a specific way that games will like be challenging that I think is really effective. So in Faster Than Light, which is that it's that spacey roguelike thing game.
Yeah.
It's a super simple one. It's the same guys who did I think it's the same guys who did Into the Breach, if I'm not mistaken.
Which I love. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. But I'll tell you. So in Faster Than Light, it's you have this, I don't know if you guys have played it, but throughout the whole thing, you're trying to get somewhere, and behind you there's the wave of bad guys, and if they catch up to you, like you're just, I don't actually know. I've not been caught up to, but like it lights a fire under you. It's like, okay, don't get caught,
Scary enough that you've never found out.
Yeah, no. It's like, yeah, don't get caught. I said, okay. So you're moving around the solar system and you have to stay ahead of these guys, and you can try to spend time getting other resources and things like that. And like, it's better if you do, but if they catch up to you, it's presumably bad news.
Hmm.
And it's a similar thing. I don't know. You guys have, Nick, you've played Bad North. I don't know
Yes.
about you, Aaron.
I have not.
But Bad North is that raw fury, real-time strategy game where you're fighting Vikings off of the islands. It's adorable. I love it. Um, and but it's a similar thing, like on the overworld map thing. Like, as you're moving from place to place, you have the Viking wave that's catching up to you, and if you get caught up, if the Viking wave catches up to you, that's game over. Um, and then so the thing between those two games, and then that I think what I think is really effective about this particular thing
Hmm.
is that it lights up. There's a pressing need that you can't ignore indefinitely.
Hmm.
And I think that because you can't ignore it, it becomes, I don't know, it lends a sense of, I don't know, impetus or urgency to your gameplay. And it's the same thing with stuff like, Don't Starve or whatever, where it's like, um, you got needs,
Hmm.
you got to eat,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't eat consistently, you're gonna die. It's the same kind of a thing that, like, first of all, you never run out of something to do because you always have to make sure you're still meeting your needs.
Yeah.
You know, um, and I don't know. It's the so it's a thing I like about games that, like, that push you to keep moving forward and keep actively struggling, I guess, consistently throughout the whole thing. Because if I have too much free time, or if I can put off everything indefinitely, then it starts to feel a little like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it's really easy in those situations. It's kind of like the classic RPG trope where you go do side quests for like forever, and then by the time you get to the main thing, you're like grotesquely overpowered.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
you know. But with something like, and these are like survival type games, so that that makes sense that they're really hard into this. But I just think it's a great feature, and I think that it makes for a more compelling, consistently compelling experience.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if you guys have experienced that kind of thing, and what your take on that is.
Yeah. I I really I like it. Um, I like it because it because it well, it's like you said, you don't have time to play the game, to optimize the fun out of it. You don't have time to. It's like there was a lot of controversy over the turn timers in XCOM 2, because in XCOM, the first XCOM, you have these missions and you have to, and you have this permadeath, and so all of your soldiers will die
Mm-hmm.
if they die, and you don't get them back. But then in XCOM 2, and then they found that what players were doing is they were playing the game really, really slowly and really, really carefully, which can be fun. But they wanted people to be making more risky decisions and to light a fire under them. So they added a lot of missions where you're timed and you have to do this soon, or else the base blows up or the data gets deleted or whatever. And that causes this risky kind of it causes risky play, and which creates more dynamic moments where scary stuff happens, characters die or get hurt, and I actually kind of enjoyed that. I never felt like I had enough time for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that you're constantly making decisions of what do I value more, because the aliens are coming, and even in the overworld, like the map, you're always managing these resources, but you can't get everything at once. You have to like go to specific places, and every time you're sacrificing something for something else, and time is a really valuable resource. And I liked it because I had to make decisions quick. I didn't spend ages and ages, like thinking about my next move and everything like that. And sometimes I'd make a move and things would go wrong, and there was no way I could have accounted for it. And I liked that. I liked how bad things went in that game. I don't like everything about that game, but I liked that things were bad, because it was this constant scramble almost, which was actually quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's important in especially survival games, but also like action games or adventure games, where there's this threat or the world is dangerous, that it continues to feel like a threat, that it continues to feel like this imposing force. Because if it got to the point where it's no longer a threat, then what are we still doing here? I think
Yeah.
a game that I think handles this really well, and that also kind of had some back and forth figuring it out, was Subnautica. So what I really like about Subnautica is, you start out, the only thing you can make is like this little tiny knife, and there are these giant sea monsters in the sea that you go up against at times. But later on in the game, you start crafting more things. You can have like big bases. You can have like big submarines. But even when you have that, there's still a level of threat. The game was in early access for a while, and there's this one kind of big submarine thing that you can make in the game. And for a while, it was basically indestructible in this early access set. Like once you got the submarine, didn't have to worry about the big sea monsters, didn't have to worry about ramming into stuff. Like, it just felt indestructible. But then eventually they actually made it almost a bit fragile. That when I was playing the game and I played after early access and I got a submarine, I didn't feel like this indestructible force. It was like, oh, I just spent like a bunch of resources on this thing. I got to make sure I don't run it into a sea monster and they destroy it, because then I have to have it. And there's like alarms that come up when the monsters show up. And so it's like, even though you don't have this knife anymore, now there's this bigger problem. It's like, oh, it's like monsters could, now if a bunch of things swarm this thing, it can still take you down. And just because you have this big thing or these big things, you're not indestructible. And I think it was a great thing, because I think if you're in Subnautica and you feel like you could just do whatever and there's no consequences, like the whole scary ocean survival thing just totally goes away. And again, it's like, then what's the point of still playing the game?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that if it's supposed to be a scary, dangerous world and you're out there trying to survive, and that's the challenge, or trying to win against an enemy, and that's the challenge. Like the enemy or the world needs to feel dangerous.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be like cheap and silly and not satisfying. But I think that there's something about the countdown effect of certain things, of certain mechanics, that like, there's kind of like Nick was saying, there's an opportunity cost whenever you do something, and so like it kind of lends weight to like every decision you make, and sometimes like the consequences aren't super severe. It's like, oh, no big deal if I get behind on this one thing just a little bit, but like, but I really like, I think I just like the constant pressure of something,
Yeah.
and a lot of like, I think open world story type games kind of really struggle with this, where it's like look, go do this important thing, but do whatever you want in the meantime, and take play the game for 30 hours and then finally get around to the main important thing. Go find your missing kidnapped cousin, or save your spouse, or defeat the enemy who's about to destroy the world, and they're all waiting for you. Yeah, but there's something about an actual timer, an actual countdown, not like a timer itself, but it's like the sense that things are moving and you can't just the world isn't waiting on you. I think that's something that I really, really appreciate about a lot of games, that I really enjoy.
It feels dynamic and exciting, even if it's something as simple as the world is going to end soon. Like, at least it's not the same forever. Like, even if this is an unstoppable wave of Vikings, like, is that really unfightable? Like, even if the world feels alive, and as opposed to, you're playing Breath of the Wild, and I love Breath of the Wild, but you're playing there and you're like, well, the world's been like this for 100 years, it'll be here like this for 100 years more. I could sit on this tower and just leave my game on for 100 hours and nothing would change. Nothing's gonna
Right.
This world is static, and it's really exciting when the world is moving and doing things. Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, for all of their weirdnesses, I really like that they have these. Every time you do a mission, all of these other missions like happen outside of you. So like orcs are always doing stuff, and while it's not on a timer necessarily, it's not like real time. Like you go and do a mission, and when you go do that, other things happen. And so like you finish that mission, it's like, let's catch you up on everything else that's happened while you were doing this mission. This orc killed this orc, and he became a new captain and whatever. And so there's this like shifting orcish political hierarchical landscape around you. And that's just one thing, but I think it does a lot to lend itself to, it does a lot to make it feel like a dynamic and a living world.
I agree, yeah. And I like, yeah, you're right. Like it doesn't have a timer on it, but it is triggered. Basically, it's the same effect because, every choice you make ultimately is not choosing a different choice.
Yeah, it's the opportunity cost.
It's the opportunity cost. It's pretty cool that way. I think whether it's things will happen without you, or you eventually die, or the Vikings will catch up to you, or you'll starve to death, or whatever. I think that's a really fun. I don't know. It just kind of lends some meaning. I think that the ultimate end or an ultimate something, it lends some meaning to your choices in the moment, because they all mean something now instead of just being idle or inconsequential, And like I think one of my favorite examples of this is like the onward march of time in Crusader Kings, where like at some point I'm gonna die, and it's not like anyone's gonna come after me and kill me if I don't act. It's not like there's an immediate threat, but
And
like,
they could.
It's well, yeah, they could if you're in their way, but like, and that does happen, yeah. But more than that, I think it's just like, at some point you're gonna die, and it's like, if I didn't do everything I wanted to do, I'm gonna be a little disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like real life, I suppose. Not to get all heavy.
Although when games give you existential crises.
And then you go, wait,
I don't.
Who's my successor? I'm gonna lose.
Who's my successor?
What is?
I don't have an heir.
What's gonna happen to my dynasty?
Anyway, that's all. Thanks.
Yeah. No, thank you. Good thoughts. Yeah, definitely. I have another thought, if you guys are down to move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was reflecting on difficulty, as one does when the topic of the week is difficulty. And I was thinking about some co-op games that I have played. And my experience with them versus some single player games I'd played. So jumping back to the fall, I was frustrated by, this game. And the challenges that it was throwing at me really, I just did not feel like were worth putting the effort into. I just didn't really enjoy being tested in that way. But I found that with cooperative games, I am willing to throw myself at stuff again and again and again. And it makes a huge difference having somebody else there, even if it's kind of a similar problem. So, and a game actually that comes to mind right now is I prepared some notes on some other ones, but this one just popped into my head. It's this game called We Were Here, which is a puzzle game, but it's a cooperative puzzle game. And you basically are two people stuck in this castle, and you both are helping each other find answers to puzzles, but you're separated, and you have a walkie-talkie, and you have to talk to the other person. And so the other person might be in a room that's steadily filling up with water, and there's all these switches on the wall. And they have to describe to the other person, hey, there's all these switches on the wall. and the other person's in a library, and they have all these books, and in the books there's information on the switches. And so the guy's like, okay, tell me what the switches look like. And the other guy's like, okay, they look like this. And so the other guy's thumbing through the book trying to figure out the puzzle and tell the other guy the answer so he can solve it before the room fills up with water. And it's this really fun back and forth puzzle solving. But they're puzzles. And they're puzzles that I don't think I normally would enjoy. But having a buddy there to help me solve them made such a huge difference. And I found that this isn't just the case in puzzle games. I had similar experiences with World War Z, with Overcooked, with Dark Souls even. Games that I enjoyed and that I already enjoyed often, but that with a buddy, I found I was willing to throw myself at frustrating problems again and again and again. Like, oh, we can do this better this time. Let's do it again. Like those puzzles and We Were Here, I just did it again and again and again. And we kept dying and we kept messing up, but we just kept throwing ourselves at it, which is not something I would have done in the fall, even though there was one prescriptive solution. But even more so in games like World War Z, I was just like, let's do it again. Let's crank up the difficulty. Let's make this harder. Let's see if we can work as a team. And I think that teamwork was really, really compelling to me. Same in Overcooked. Like, let's try to perfect our strategy. And then even with Dark Souls recently, which I've been playing co-op for the first time, like with somebody that I know instead of just randos online, it's been delightful to see how much the game changes and how much more willing I am to throw myself at insurmountable gut dragons. So I wondered if you guys had similar dragons. Yeah, it's Dark Souls for you. But I wonder if you guys had similar experiences of and do you feel the same way? Why not? That's my question.
Well, I definitely wasn't going to play Overcooked or World War Z by myself. I do feel similarly. I feel like that's the appeal of those games. Those two in particular that I'm thinking of, like the terror of fighting the zombies in World War Z, and like the satisfaction of working on the teamwork and being there to help each other when you need it is like that's what man, I just think that's what's so fun about that game. And it's such an achievement when you make it through. I remember when Nick and I made it through the campaign with our buddy Christopher, and like it was like such a glorious, like victorious, like triumphant kind of like, hey, look what we did together. We made it through this whole thing, and it was really hard and really scary, but it was because it was really hard and really scary that the triumph ultimately meant so much, which is something we've talked about like 3 times today already. But it's interesting, Nick, that you talk about how like you don't want to play them really without other people, and like We Were Here wouldn't be that fun to you if it wasn't with other people. And Overcooked, definitely. You can't even really play Overcooked alone. It's just too hard.
Overstressed.
Might be the hardest game. Overstressed. But like similarly, like beating Overcooked with a team that has gone through kitchen after kitchen together, and like like that's some good stuff right there. That feels good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of related to a similar thought I've been having, where like lately I'm playing a lot of games like Crusader Kings and Stardew Valley and like Minecraft and stuff, and like the idea there is that like the feeling I'm having is when I'm playing it on my own, I basically feel like I'm preparing for when I play it with other people.
Yeah.
Like it feels incomplete, If I'm playing Crusader Kings alone, it's because I'm practicing. So that I know how to play better when there's a group. And then if I'm playing Stardew Valley, it's kind of the same thing. And if I'm playing Minecraft, I'm like in the world with everybody else, but I'm like building something so that ultimately I can share it with other people, or build something that other people will interact with, And it's like it just feels incomplete to me alone,
Yeah. I think as far as you mentioned, Nick, about how like in these cooperative experiences, like you're like you kind of want more of a challenge. You want them to
Mm-hmm.
be harder or like something to get over. I was thinking there's
Yeah.
like something, with co-op games, with games you're playing with other people, that's like they're more of a game. I don't know, than like some single experiences. It's like, oh, like getting through this story, or like trying to, and I see this arc in this game. Where a lot of times you're playing other people, it's just, I don't know, yeah, kind of you're creating your own challenges, or you're just working with what the game has to accomplish something. The more goal and objective oriented. Um, and so I think that's something where it's like, because it has that different focus. That's like, yeah, instead of the challenges getting in the way, they are the way. They are
Uh-huh.
the point of what
Mm.
your experience is and what you're going through.
Yeah. I think I think I completely agree with you. Like I think that like the challenge, if I'm understanding right, is it makes it being central to the experience like often elevates the co-op game, because I've played a lot of co-op games. Like, you can play Animal Crossing co-op. um, I haven't actually done that, but honestly the idea isn't all that appealing to me, because it's like, what is there to overcome? Why would I?
The
I
online
guess
service,
I
you
guess
have to overcome the Nintendo online service.
Nintendo Online, that's the enemy. but but I have played more chill, relax, let's just hang out and vibe games,
Yeah.
and it's just it's not the same. Obviously, it's not the same as hard, challenging games. But like, I think that co-op games especially benefit from like you said, like this goal-oriented, like challenge focus kind of a design, where you're really like you're working towards something with somebody. That's where like teamwork comes in, and so even if that is just overcoming the wonky physics of human fall flat, like I remember playing that with uh with somebody, and it was just like, when we get to the end of the level, there's this sense of just tremendous satisfaction. And I think it's just amplified by having another person there. We did this together. It's like you said, Zach, like there's just this feeling. When we finished World War Z, it was just, there was something almost transcendent about it. It was like, wow, what a thing that we did together. What a thing that we went through together. Like, Don't Starve, I think, even similarly. It's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
look at this camp we made. And then, we all die of rain, because rain kills you in Don't Starve. Because everything kills you in Don't Starve. But
Yeah.
Rain, that's right.
there's it was rain. We're all ready for this. All right, we finally got our camp. We made it through winter. The giant deer cyclops didn't kill us, but it's okay. We're all good. And then it rained and we all died. Um, but yeah, and the sense of satisfaction that comes from accomplishing something with a team is just tremendous. I think. And I think that's not exclusive to video games, but I think that co-op games that do that are much more appealing to me than co-op games that are about socializing or hanging out or just having fun.
Yeah, I want to do stuff with people. I want to overcome and work on things and accomplish stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. But yeah, thank you guys for your thoughts. That's most of what I had to talk about. We can move on. Zach, you wanted to talk about The Sims 4.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So the problem I have with The Sims 4 is that it's boring. Um, and what's funny is that like probably would have enjoyed it more when I was like a kid. In fact, I remember playing The Sims 3 when I was like younger and thinking like I was like a teenager or something, and like it was like it's fun, it's cool, it's whatever. But like um but I don't know, it's funny because I was talking about how like there's the impending needs in those other games I was chatting about,
Yeah.
where it's like that actually lends a lot to it and gives it some urgency and meaning and whatever. But in The Sims, it's funny because it has like you have like a needs bar, or several bars. It's like six or something where it's like you got to go to the bathroom, you got to eat, you got to sleep, you got to have fun,
Uh huh.
you got to socialize with people. You know, you gotta take showers and baths and things like that. So like they're constantly ticking down. But I don't know. I guess there's the needs, but there's no challenge, you know? Like it's not hard. Like
You click on the
you
bathroom, say go.
you click on the bathroom every few minutes and it's kind of tedious more than anything. It's like, can't we just automate this? I mean, it's not maybe if the game was about like the challenge of going to the bathroom, like, you know, maybe if it was like a like some VR game where you have to like aim.
Oh man.
I'm sure it exists.
Oh man.
Like that would make
The
that would make
crusty.
the really everyday chore of going to the bathroom like really interesting. Or like a game where you're like trying to help a baby potty train or something. Like that would be
I'd play that.
challenging, you know? But but the fact that it's so easy, you know, like there's and this is a wider problem I have with the game is that it's not hard to do anything. Like you can bend the whole world to your will with just a little bit of effort and there's no real limiting things. You can even reverse death, I think, definitely in The Sims 3. I don't think I played long enough to die in Sims 4. Um but but the like you can and you can like seduce anyone even if they're like happily married and of your same gender and have had no previous inclinations toward, you know, homosexuality or whatever. It could be like or you know like whatever sexuality that they haven't demonstrated so far. You know, that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, there's no added challenge of like, you know, like Crusader Kings, it's like, oh, I want to seduce this person. It's like, sorry, that person's a lesbian. They're not interested in you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's, oh, okay, fine. Or, I don't know, but like in Sims, it's like, it's,
You can have everything.
you just do anything. Everything is bent to your will. You can make a ton of money really easily. You can, control how your character turns out and how their whole family turns out. You control the everyday everything and like, there's just no, I don't know. It's kind of like, it's almost like a little aquarium of people more than anything, or like a dollhouse where you know,
Mm-hmm.
which I know is kind of like the original idea, but it's kind of boring, you know, like, I don't know. I don't know. I was wondering if you guys have played games that felt like that and if you feel similarly disappointed by them.
Mm. I mean, that definitely sounds disappointing. I haven't played much of The Sims myself. Um, I just remember dinking around and making goofy looking characters and naming them after my relatives. But like, but I but I don't like having all of the control in the world. I used to play Minecraft creative mode, you know, because it was so because I could do whatever I wanted, and I think when I was younger that was more exciting to me. It's like I can do whatever I want. This is great. I can't go near Minecraft creative mode anymore though. Like I have to play in survival and I wish survival mode was harder. It's like God, this has just become this has become so easy. Like I want needs. I want challenges. Um and so yeah, because there's no challenge is compelling, and if there's no challenge, why I don't find myself going towards many games where there is no challenge. Even Animal Crossing, you're trying to get out of debt all the time and deal with all of your depressed animal friends. Like, you know, there's
Man, they're like all neurotic.
yeah,
Man. Yeah.
you know, like there's a challenge there even. There's growth, room for growth, you know, and it's hard to obtain that growth. It's not all just given to you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I guess that's basically it. You know, it's just it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. I don't like it to be inconsequential or too easy or anything. You know, I like having things demanded of me.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It often seems like those games, you know, we've kind of talking about like playing a game your own way to compensate for, you know, some of the shortcomings of the game. It's like I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to
Yeah.
challenge yourself. It's like, okay, I can only have this many people, doing this or this many things, um, or like like what you guys have done with Minecraft. It's like you're creating like your own systems and your own economy and your own rules in the world, in a world that kind of
Mm-hmm.
operates without them. So, um,
Yeah. It's like a foundation, and you build your own game on top of it a
yeah,
little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
not exactly the same thing, but
And it's
I play this dumb little mobile game where I don't really play mobile games, but it's just like this dumb little game. You have to like find the words. You have like 5 letters, and it's like, oh, what are the words? And you can like buy hints and things. But I don't know. It was too easy, and I think I just do it just to, I don't know, do something with my thumb while I'm sitting around doing nothing or watching something. But I implemented like an arbitrary rule where it's like, so you have, I don't know, say you have 7 letters. It's like there'd be like one 7-letter word and then a bunch of little ones. I implemented this rule for myself. It's like I have to find the 7-letter word before I can find the other words, and it gave myself like more of a challenge to beat it. But at the end of the day, it's just like, why am I doing this anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if a game doesn't give you a challenge, then you make the challenge yourself. But then it's like, at that point, why don't you just play something else?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like the whole. We talked about this last week and many times before, but it's like if there's no mechanical reason or reality to what you're inventing for yourself, then it's kind of empty.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like the restraint of like I'm not gonna fast travel in this game.
Yep.
Because I want to, because I want to pretend that I want to experience the challenge of actually traveling,
Mm-hmm.
which was fun for about like the first time I traveled everywhere, but like ultimately you're kind of like, why am I there? There are wagons, there is fast travel in this game,
Yeah.
and I feel kind of, I don't know,
It's hard.
you know,
Yeah, it's hard to pretend that exploits don't exist. Like,
yeah,
it's hard to like. I like to approach a game as the player, and I don't mind like having to use creativity as the player, but I don't want to have to come up with the game as well. Like, I'd rather have a fully formed game for me to try to creatively problem solve my way through. I don't want to have to make a game.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I like the idea of making games, but like when I sit down to play a game, I don't want to have to make the game and then solve the game.
Right.
I'd like to just do one of those things.
You make your own.
yeah,
game. And I think there's ways that games can handle, being overpowered. Like I think there are certain games where like after a certain point you want to feel a little overpowered. I remember, playing the new God of War game. At a certain point in the game, you want to feel like a god, and
Yeah.
get to the point.
Yeah.
But even in that game, even though it's like, oh, I can handle these little enemies really well, and I have all these awesome powers, make me feel like a god. Oh, there's still these Valkyries that'll kick your teeth in. So
You're still fighting other gods.
yeah, you're still fighting. Hey, guess you're fighting gods. Yeah.
yeah,
Or I think Dark Souls. It's like by the time I got to the end of Dark Souls, I felt pretty overpowered. But I think the difference is like I earned that, and I had to. It was really difficult to get to that point.
yeah,
And I recognize like the sacrifice to get there. And even then, yeah, there's still bosses that are difficult. But I think a lot of adventure games, like I don't know, it's like an arc where like you want the player to feel in control more than they were before, or like have a better handle on things. I think if a game just continued to escalate the challenge, whether you felt you were in the exact same spot the entire game, I think that would be too much. So I think there's a balance there.
Yeah.
yeah. That sucks. I hate that so much when it's like I'm leveling up, but everything is leveling at the same rate
So
as
is the
me, so it's
chicken.
effectively nothing.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, why is
And it's-
there a leveling system if everything levels up?
yeah. And it's horrible, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when everyone's super, like.
No one will be.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, it's all based on like experience points and loot. It's like, oh, we don't want the player to like feel like they can't grind these areas because they don't get anything worthwhile. But then it's like, yeah, but then again, like you said, the levels are just arbitrary notches in the game's progress rather than actual difficulty spikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the I mean, Oblivion is kind of famous for that. It's like as soon as you get good enough to wipe the floor with the low level enemies, they all vanish and then the large ones appear and it's like, well,
Yeah.
uh.
I
Yeah.
don't really like, or like when weapons just level up throughout the world. Like I didn't, playing The Witcher and you do these quests and these people give you these like really awesome swords, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're like level 50 and then you kill this dude and pick up his like level 50 Novigrad longsword and it's better than any of these
Like,
awesome swords that you found.
Yeah.
like, dang it! Like the king gave this to me. It was made by his like
Right?
royal smiths, and now like this
Yeah.
peasant scum has a better sword than I do, and I have to use it because I want to win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what's God, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful. But
Yeah, man. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, leveling and that's another
yeah,
interesting concept.
That
definitely.
could be a
I'd be interested to
whole
revisit
nother topic.
that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I think we've gone through all our points today, and thank you for sharing them all. We'd like to take a moment now to just kind of review what we have discussed, and in short, really what we have learned. So, what do you guys feel like we have? What have we come away with? What have we learned from our discussion today? What we can start at the top, work our way down, or we can just chat about what comes to mind. But like, um,
Yeah. Well, I'll go.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think when we were talking about the earlier stuff in the episode, I was thinking like uh I think that something I take away is that I like a game to have, first of all, something that has been over and over again is I like a game to have a challenge.
mm-hmm.
And so like it's gotta, like I've been saying like over and over again, it's gotta demand something in order for me to get anything out of it. I gotta
Yes,
give in order to get, you know.
mm-hmm.
The sacrifice has to be there, the contrast has to be there of the highs and the lows, you know.
Yeah,
And then also I like the challenges to be authentic
yeah,
and not contrived, you know, and for me to be fighting what I'm supposed to be fighting, you know, the obstacles in the game instead of the obstacle of the game itself. uh, or some terrible design decision. And then also I like to enter into the challenges voluntarily, instead of being forced into them, you
mm-hmm.
know. And being able to choose to engage with uh, what's hard, you know,
Yeah,
when I want to. And I think that those are the main things that really kind of stuck out to me this time around.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think something I learned, or something that seems to, some principles seems to be gleaned with our discussion, is that difficulty in game is is a relationship of trust between the game and the player. And if the player
Mm-hmm.
trusts the game in its difficulty level and how it's going to handle that, and the game trusts the player in their ability to get through it, or in being able to work with what the game has, then it seems like that the challenge works. But if any of that is upset, if the player is doubting the game and its ability to handle the challenge, or like you said, it's a challenge with the game itself, or the game doesn't trust the player and has to handhold them through things, or has to make them overpowered, or has to artificially alter the game, in a way that's not satisfying, uh, then that difficulty, the satisfaction of that difficulty, isn't there. So
Yeah. It's amazing how satisfying difficulty can be. I think that like I understand where Miyazaki's coming from, guy who made Dark Souls, when he built these games, and he's saying, I want people to feel satisfied when they've accomplished it, and I want people to come away from the game, like really with a meaningful experience, and I think we've talked about how meaningful that can be, even the unpleasant and the pleasant, and I think there's so much more we can dive into with this. Like I would love to talk with you guys at some point about like difficulty settings and like personalizing that and all of that sorts of things. But I think that we've come away with some good stuff. And I agree with the points you guys have brought up. And yeah, so thanks. Any other thoughts before we close?
No, man, that was good for me.
Awesome.
Yeah, good discussion.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening. Our game highlight this month is Darkest Dungeon, so play along with us. We'll be chatting about that soon. We're all playing that together. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're Games by Design. We'll see you next week.